Okay.
I was paying attention to you.
Okay, is it that one? Is it that one?
That one works, as long as I know.
Different version will be the
Okay.
That's
Anybody
not
else
the
have
sound
scheduled
one, but that's
on the list?
Still doesn't.
Forward
work,
it
but you're recording the whole thing, so.
Remind me when you get home to check your.
Let me get to focus
We're
on
gonna
it.
get the list and the
Yeah, I
schedule.
don't believe that.
What?
The list and the schedule.
I know,
Whatever.
but I'm showing everybody the how conference system.
Sorry, you brought me and DJ. in the first thing. And you remember when DJ saw it came up on his Facebook feed to buy one? Did he talk about that? Isn't that interesting?
Whoa,
Hi,
man.
just the Bristol on the river.
Hello? Hey, just real quick, the team project list, I left that open on my desk. Computer. Can you save and close that so when anyone else can access it while we're working on it? So if you need to go over to my computer right now, make sure you have your password. But just look at the bottom of the desktop, you know, the taskbar, spreadsheet, you know, Excel spreadsheet, just
I am.
save. Yeah, if it's not there, maybe I didn't. But what I don't want is wrong in this meeting. is I didn't access it. Maybe I could close it. All right, thank you, just checking. All right, see you when I get back. Bye.
Not a lot. Yeah, that's kind of simple.
No, like,
No belonging.
bring my Christmas coasters out.
They took the old meeting room.
And then Thanksgiving.
The old meeting
Yeah,
room.
Christmas,
that's
yes,
correct.
I remember that.
I thought you guys were.
That's for public meeting, or for meetings. That's why I was surprised. to hear That'd be stupid.
Well, that way they did that. They put a meeting in there, they can't expect. Hey, Chris, you're gonna be part.
Hmm?
You're gonna say.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, there's people parked. Well.
If I convene before this is done, will you copy that?
Yes.
On your sheet,
Yes.
and leave a copy here.
Sure. Of course.
Those are tremendous questions. There's a lot of questions that could go past your time, but if there's not, we plan on ending around that time. We've been kind of doing questions about it. She got school by.
I was thinking about
Almost good. Yeah.
You're gonna owe me one.
It's very important.
I know.
Nobody wants to talk to.
Chris?
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. You met Bob before? Auburn?
Yep.
Well, I might be stepping off. This is more landscape stuff.
Yeah.
I started out, and then if you need any building stuff, I'm here, but otherwise it's mostly.
Okay, very good. You ready to start, Ron? Yeah, first, thank you, everybody, for showing up this morning. I know we've got a pretty large group. I think we have like 16 in the steering committee now, so if 3 or 4 don't make it, we still have plenty of group here. We're gonna have breakout sessions with smaller groups to have discussions on what we want to see as the streetscape. I think we can all get this accomplished. Thank you all for being here.
Apologize for the room temp. We're doing what we can. We haven't even talked about anything controversial. We've already raised the temperature of the room. By the way, if I haven't met some of you, I've not met. I am the new town manager, not so new anymore, but Mike Givers. Thank you for agreeing to meet here and saying yes to Ron. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Sure.
And then just take it from that
Yeah.
point.
My name is Chris Chalkley. I'm a landscape architect and planner for JPR. I'll be leading the Streetscape Master Plan project for this. And
Ed Kowalczyk, I'm an architect with JPR. I work on this building.
And Bob Hayden, I'm also a landscape, and I'll be joining my assistant Chris. So
very good. So what I'd like to do is maybe go around the room. I know that we want to be respectful for everybody's time since it is Monday morning at 8 o'clock. I know everybody is either has businesses or needs to get back to work. So we want to keep this fairly quick. I'm hoping to get as much information as I can within an hour. So everybody can go back and do the things that you do. So appreciate it. But what I'd like to do is maybe go around the room. If you can introduce yourself, what business you work for, or what you're active in with the town. So we'll start over there.
All right. Good morning. My name is Jill Sword. I'm the deputy clerk treasurer for the town of Bristol.
I'm Kathy Burke and I'm on the town board.
Rob Drake, I'm the barber on the street. We're also with Edward Jones. I did say.
Delbert and you.
Your turn to introduce yourself.
He's Delbert Trump, who's my other half.
I'm not part of this group.
Neither am I.
I'm just here because she's here.
We're Bob and Beth White. We are the previous owners of T&B White.
My name is Don Dorton, owner of Featherstone Home and Cottage Care. Bristol resident as well.
Ron Norman, I served on the town council for 7 years, and I currently serve as president of Bristol on the River. And I helped Mike to form the steering committee so we could all have a say in how we want to see our Main Street look. And I'm a resident.
I'm Linda Schrock and I'm just here.
I needed a secretary to take notes. I didn't know for sure if anybody wanted to volunteer for that position, so I got her to fill in for one day, and on a Monday at that.
He voluntold me.
Voluntold?
Yes.
I'm Jody Evans and Bill Evans Insurance. Doreen Kaufman, I work at IMCO Workforce Solutions on Main Street.
I'm Pat Barnes. This is my husband, Rich Barnes. We own the Lavender Patch down the street.
I'm Dave Dufour. I'm the executive director of the Bristol Elkhart Theater at Bristol Opera House.
Very good. All right, thank you. So what our objective today is to, so today's the strategic kickoff meeting for this project. I know that JPR will be working with the group to develop a downtown streetscape master plan in a very kind of high level detail, so that we can understand the potential planning for this this section of road. And just give you a quick overview of what we're thinking of is we got division on the west and then Pearl on the east. And a lot of this is driven based on the bypass, the 15 bypass going down Pearl. Is that right?
Why don't I explain?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that?
So how we got to this point, first of all, I think it's been talked about for a year generally that it'd be nice to just redo down Main Street, downtown Bristol, but of course we had a state road going through that area, a lot of traffic, 12, 14,000 semis a day. So the state of Indiana, NDOT, was planning to rebuild, you probably heard, to rebuild. In fact, it's still scheduled to be rebuilt in 2024 from storefront to storefront. They're taking out everything and grinding down to the dirt. We probably wouldn't be surprised if we did a replacement of water and sewer at that time as well. So major disruption for the town. What we are negotiating with NDOT is to do a jurisdictional swap where they build the bypass from State Road 15 up through Pearl Street, and that's their road. That's the new State Road 15. And then we would take over, they would switch jurisdiction of State Road 120 to the town. So it now becomes our main street, and we have total control over that. Of course, in the process, the monies that NDOT was going to put towards the rebuilding of downtown goes to the bypass. So either way, the town is going to spend some money, but in this scenario, if we are successful with the jurisdictional swap, we have total control in of what we want to do with our downtown. And that's where we are today, is beginning to plan what that might look like. Would be, can't imagine it would be before 2024, but probably 2025, we may look at starting this process and doing it in a way that doesn't interrupt the way NDOT would do it. It would be a total summer of disruption. I don't know how some of your businesses would survive, frankly. So this way we can phase it and do it in a way that doesn't totally disrupt business, but at the end of the day, we've got a really nice new downtown Main Street area. That
Good.
sound great?
Sounds good.
Is everybody enthused? That's about as excited as I get personally.
I'm excited.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that we're gonna want to get from the business owners, is just your thoughts and ideas of, one is how do you run your business? Two is that pedestrian access to your businesses. Three is that we're gonna be looking at what kind of pedestrian access you have in and around your business and along the street. A lot of the stuff that we've been working on recently was the downtown Elkhart revitalization plan. If everybody's familiar with that, of all the reconstruction that's going on right now, and bringing that urban concept back into the downtown area, an extension of the Main Street into the River District. So a lot of it is expanded walkways, tree plantings along the street to give that physical and psychological barrier between the road and the pedestrian corridors. And then how you have that interaction between the vehicular traffic, the drop-off areas, the loading, unloading of vehicles, trucks, things like that. And so we need to get as much information from this committee as possible as we go through this. I just want to just emphasize that this plan is the town's plan. I guess I'm doing some unsafe activity right now, so yeah. But this is what we're going to do. We're going to try to help guide you through this. So as much input as we possibly can is what we're going to incorporate into the overall design. So right now we have the aerial photo up there. I know it's kind of hard to read, but like I said, it's a 4-block section. There's various developments along here, some vacant lots. We do have a building there with some parking on right along the street. So we want to kind of take a look at what the existing conditions are, and then how do you incorporate a potential road diet in there. Right now, there's 4 lanes that go through the road, through this area, and there's a possibility of doing a road diet. which means taking it from a 4-lane road down to maybe a 2-lane or a 3-lane. And as you can see on the agenda, some of the cross sections that we're looking at. So this is the aerial. I'm going to back up a second. So what I want to do is go through some case studies that we've worked on in the past of bringing pedestrian components into a streetscape area. This one is the Morris Theater in South Bend, where we could pretty much close down a road, and we had that as kind of a public plaza space during events. Not that I'm saying that that could be potentially done for this road, but there is some possibilities of bringing that public engagement parks, pocket parks, things like that into the space. We did the Auburn Cultural Plaza, and I'm just showing you these as kind of like inspirational images. Maybe it'll kind of get the juices flowing, but bringing in public pocket parks, landscaping, seating areas into the space. We have the amphitheater, say you want to do outdoor performances. Like I said, landscaping along with the adjacent existing uses. I don't know what's going on with that. But this plaza was actually designed to not only have outdoor gathering events, but also for additional parking. So it's kind of a multi-use functional space. We brought a lot of lighting components into it, a lot of the art aspects into the design. There's another image of the amphitheater. This is I believe it's the Decatur Streetscape, bringing in Plaza pavement patterns. Components of that, not just concrete, asphalt, but in the roadway of bringing in brick pavers, things that bring a little artistic expression to it, including lighting overhead. Everybody's seen the string lights. How do you bring that in to make the downtown a very dynamic space to be in? This is the conceptual design that we had put together for that streetscape design. Another image of bringing art into it. And you can see how the roadway was closed down for events. Landscaping, trees, benches. The downtown Main Street project. Wow, there's a whole lot of stuff. But what we did here is we looked at ways to bring in parallel parking, some planter beds, seating areas. Not only look at the horizontal, but the vertical elements to separate traffic. It must be that connection. We also worked on the Bartlett Street roundabout design in downtown South Bend, where we had roundabout designs. We had the sense of entry when you go into the downtown space, bringing art into it, landscaping. We looked at how that interacts with the adjacent businesses, such as the Memorial Hospital. And parking, obviously, that's a key component. Kendallville downtown, everybody's been down there. That was a 4-lane road. We looked at a road diet for that. We brought parallel parking in, crosswalks. A close-up of this is how that parallel parking will work. Instead of a 4-lane road, we brought it down to a 2-lane with a center turn lane, and looked at tree placements, receptacles, because what do you do during festivals? Is there food trucks that want to be brought in there? Are you going to have tents, art fairs, things like that? So as we kind of go through this process, we just want to get how you envision using this space, how the businesses will interact with the pedestrian corridor as well as the vehicular. So because I said that we're going to be looking at a high level, we may not get down to the very small particulates, but at least we'd identify where your public gathering spaces are, where your parallel parking. Do you want to do parallel? Do you want to do angle? There's a whole gamut of things that we potentially incorporate into the streetscape design. One of the things that I had mentioned before I jump back was, what is that potential cross section of that road? Right now you have a 4-lane highway that runs through the downtown area. Is it 2-lane? Okay.
A lot of people make it.
It's wide enough, right? It's wide enough. So bringing that road diet down, bringing in, there's potential of bringing the lanes down to 10.5 foot, which scares a lot of people because, the potential of going back and forth in that narrow lane. But what that does is it makes people go slower. And that's the big intent of downtown streetscape urban design, is that you want people to travel through that corridor slower. Is it possible for trucks to get by each other? Yes. It's that perception that freaks a lot of people out.
Semi
So-
also? Semi trucks too?
Yes. Yeah. So if you've been to Elkhart and the Jackson Boulevard streetscape, those are 10.5-foot lanes. And what it does is that makes trucks go a lot slower because, well, just that perception. So that's kind of what the urban design principle is, to bring those road lanes down for more focus on pedestrian traffic. And then what you're gonna find is that if that gets implemented or whatever gets implemented, you're gonna have a lot of people that are gonna be calling you, saying, hey, you designed something that is not travel, you can travel down there. But what it does is it focuses more on the pedestrian component, and that's just changing that mindset. So the top one would be a center turn lane with 2 lanes going each direction and parallel parking. There is a potential that you could look at angle parking. We'd have to look at that, look at what the existing right of way is. The middle picture would be 2 lanes with no center turn lane, and you bring bike lanes in and parallel parking, and then you have your tree areas and then a wider sidewalks. And then the bottom one would be 2 lanes each direction with a median, with turn lanes going at the intersections. And that kind of creates a little bit softer feeling, kind of more direction or directional use of those lanes. So it all depends on how the businesses are used, how if you have driveways, access ways, if you want to manage the traffic through there. There's several ways we can feel this onion. So I wanted to just show you that and basically open it up for discussions of what everybody's thoughts were. If you were to design or redesign this downtown area, what would it look like? What kind of things do you envision? Yes.
I wouldn't, I've been down Jackson Street, where they put the median in the middle of the road,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a mess. The turn lanes are like not even one car
Right.
able to turn. And like I said, the first one wouldn't be, because that's figured on 4 lanes. We're, like I said, we're only 2.
Right.
We need the parking. So the parking needs to be maintained.
Yeah. Okay.
Would everybody agree that the sidewalk width that we have now is adequate?
Yeah.
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 I think a little less.
And even though this is considered 2 lane, there's a lot of days when you're in your traffic hours that people make it a 4 lane. Just because the width is there.
Right.
It's totally 4 lane all day long.
There you go.
Right.
You're right.
Want somebody parked there.
Yes.
Right.
People park
I
where they
would,
shouldn't.
not do the trees, I would do huge flower pots.
Do what?
You open our door every day and what comes in, all the blossoms, all the leaves, they get tracked in.
Yeah, they're a mess.
But I think you get those low lying flower pots that maybe are this big. And you can replant or put stuff in them for every holiday season.
Yeah, I know the city of Elkhart, before they had big trees, and this is on their main street. They had big trees, and then when they put those planters in, they decided they wanted smaller ornamental trees. 1 for visibility of businesses,
with all the
and then 2
blossoms
is to.
that come in the door.
I've noticed in the past when we had some trees down by the barber shop, down by the lavender patch, that they often get used as cigarette disposal.
Sure.
And they block the view of the businesses.
Yeah.
So,
Block their
Used as
sign.
what?
Yeah.
Used as what?
Cigarette,
Ashtray.
ashtrays and
Yeah.
where you put your butts.
Yeah, that's something we definitely, we look at as some of the details when we do a streetscape, because of the cigarettes are an issue. If you do joints in the concrete that are big enough, you never think about it, but those hold cigarette butts and you can't sweep and clean those up.
I like
So-
the idea of like the main parking next to the Redbird, that's, get rid of some of the trees and put some outside seating back there where you can view the river. And then maybe give a chance for
You guys have
an outdoor.
Well, over the end of the parking lot, a half circle out over the riverbank would be great.
Maybe some pier parking at the park or at the, down behind the town parking.
There is the area where the community garden is, this time, that was purchased by the town to make a parking lot also. It's not gonna hold that many cars, but,
If they buy the Frontier or the Telephone lot.
the total
And tear it down, they'll
yeah.
have more.
keep that in mind. We can discuss it.
If you maintain that angle parking, do any of these options that we're seeing up here work at all?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we'd be looking at maybe, there's potential bringing bump outs into the street, to help reduce the passing of vehicles when it's slow and making the 4-lane road, kind of defining those travel lanes and defining or just helping control traffic.
When you're
And-
talk- I'm
yeah.
sorry. When you're talking about the 4 block area, are you only talking to this road or are you talking all the way to the light? Because this is the worst area here for 4-lane park, for 4-lane. We've had people have their,
There's
rear
accidents.
view mirror, their side mirrors knocked off and everything because they're parking along here.
Right.
And then somebody makes it 4-lane.
It happens down by me too. I've
Oh, does it?
Oh, yeah, I've almost got hit in the side just trying to turn into my parking place because they're trying to use the turn or the parking places for a turn lane.
There's not a person that has a business down there, Rob, my wife, myself, whatever, if you park on Main Street, your rear bumper has been scraped, you'll be
Yeah.
hit on numerous
All of
occasions.
mine is hit.
I've had my own car hit 3 different times.
That's what I mean, every vehicle that she drives to work,
That
I've had
angle
their-
parking is terrible downtown.
but it's because they're trying to use it as 4-lane.
Right.
So if you cut back the sidewalk and move the angle parking in,
It depends on the size of the vehicle and the angled parking spot. I can tell you many times, if a great big double duty truck is in that first spot in front of the Redbird, I can't hardly get out on the main street to turn right.
wow.
Because you cannot see, and you cannot see when things are in front of the Opera House. When they're doing construction and putting things over there, you cannot see down that road to pull out.
How about, like to see maybe like the first Friday, like Goshen or South Bend does, or Elkhart's doing 2 now, I think, or maybe like a second Saturday. Another big issue, I think everybody here in this room would probably agree, is we're gonna beautify downtown Bristol. We gotta do something about the house down the street. Everybody here probably knows exactly what house we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's stay on track with what we're here. Our purpose here is for streetscapes right now. And
Thank you.
I'd like us to stay focused on that. These are discussions that we can have, just like the riverbank. They're working with a consultant now for riverbank restoration, and what you're talking about, a little river walk and a patio area, all falls into that. What we want to focus on here is streetscape, Main Street, and that's 120 light to light, and that's 15 south to the tracks. Can we all agree to stay on that point on that? Okay, very good. Thank you.
So I have that problem in front of my store where people use it as a 4-lane and people trying to pull in get hit. I've had numerous accidents out there. So by putting the little jaunts out, are people just gonna run over those little extensions? I mean, some of these guys are nuts.
Well, I think initially they probably will, but they would be designed in a way that they know that it's there. There's people that are gonna be like doing what they've always done for the last 40 years that just are gonna find out quick that, it is what it is. But basically what I would look at is the way this intersection is configured. Because we have heavy traffic going eastbound and then northbound. So with the potential reduction of that, we may look at that intersection and how that works. And if we do the potential of the road diet, that might make pedestrian crossings a lot safer. And that's one thing we want to look at.
I think we have to realize too, that what we're talking about is after the bypass is done. So we won't have all these trucks.
Right.
And people just came in late.
What's the timeline for the
Mine.
bypass?
Might. tell you.
The downtown reconstruction period was 2024, so I've asked NDOT to consider building the bypass in 2024 instead. I don't know if that will get done in one construction season, but we would, at the earliest, we would start this in 2025. My guess is we'd be looking at 2026. Because when you start blocking off Main Street, you'll force new driving patterns. We want those to go south on Pearl down to 15. We only want people that need to be downtown or want to be downtown driving down.
I think a concern all of you have too is, oh, we're gonna tear Main Street up and it's, you know, my business is gonna suffer. I just recently worked on a job east of Shipshewana, and the customer I worked for told me about how they did their Main Street, and they did it a block at a time. And it didn't happen all in 1 year, but they put all new infrastructure in, all new asphalt, curb, gutter, sidewalks, and they completed their Main Street, doing it in increments like that. And it was less painful for the businesses that are on Main Street.
Both sides of the street at the same time.
I don't know, they probably would have had to, since they did water and sewer main, they probably did tear the whole block up, but they have to maintain access to those businesses, even though it's primitive access. There has to be an access there, just like we have a public parking lot there. If they're working in that block, you gotta at least have a dirt berm there. Schoolcraft, same thing. If you go through Schoolcraft now, you see what they put together. They have a multi-use path, a nice path. They've got nice wide lanes now. They've got the center median in there. And they tore that up, but still maintain traffic flow and access to those businesses. But it was a pain until it was finished.
Yeah, a lot of our streetscape projects that we work on, when it goes under construction, we carefully look at the mains of traffic and the phasing. We don't want businesses to go out, you know, for weeks on end without access to the front. So there's ways you can do it. You can do the north half and construct the north half and then construct the south half, or per block. But we always require contractors to carefully work with the business owners to make sure there's always access, whether you have and it all depends on if you have a pedestrian access in the rear of your building or is it all in the front, but we always require the contractor to work with the business owners so you don't get shut down.
Would it be possible to get like rental access to some of the other parking lots in town during that, like part of the bank, part of the medical people? And use, you know, get permission from them or rent from them for X amount of cars just
Yeah.
to take up.
When it gets to that point, which is 25, maybe, I think there's always that discussion, negotiation that can always take place with that. So there's a lot of possibilities out there. But go back to the streetscape. I mean, just looking at this graphic, you know, I can see where you have some issues because you have someone parallel parking on angle parking. So it's that kind of design and thought process as we go through this of how do you control that? How do you prevent that from happening? How do you prevent people from passing other people because the lanes are so big? With NDOT, you typically have a drive lane that's 14, 15 feet wide. So we want to narrow that down to make it more pedestrian friendly, slow traffic down, do the traffic calming elements in there, and make this someplace that people want to be in rather than terrified of what's going to happen with their cars or with them walking across the street.
Chris, can you come dial us back into the intersection
Yeah.
right there? Okay, we all know that that's the filling station, the Open Door Center, Memorial Park, Mr. Stoll's house is on the corner. We already have this intersection built at the bypass down here. This is one that'll get rebuilt, I assume, right? This will be the next main intersection that'll have to be designed and built. Just an opinion on Roundabout there. That means acquisition of properties and everything to do a sizable roundabout. Does anybody have an opinion on that?
I think once the trucks are gone, we would not have. Yeah, I know that on 15 South, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. They're planning on putting a roundabout out there. Now, you weren't here when Mike gave his presentation that eventually NDOT's going to take over the bypass and then give the town thought. But they're gonna be putting a roundabout out there. So the traffic is forced out there. I wouldn't think we would need to go to the expense of changing an intersection in town with less traffic than if they're all going through bypass.
So the semis are gonna be made to go that way, they won't be.
Yes.
I'm just, the pictures you showed of some of your projects where you've got roundabouts that have green spaces, micro parks within those. They're the accoutrements that are installed there for aesthetics. I'm looking that, when I look at that, I'm not looking at something that moves traffic. I'm looking at something that's really a centerpiece in the town. Because again, you have 15 south from this traffic light to the tracks that's going to develop in time. That strip that's our main street. Our main street is through here and then it goes south and it'll go beyond the tracks to a point. So I think we got to look at it. How do we want to look at aesthetics? Certainly we want to look at cost, but we also want to look at something that's, when people come to Bristol, they're like, wow, these people really got it going on. They knew what they were doing when they put this together.
You know, I found when you go to a roundabout, these people don't stop, they don't yield, they try and cut you off to make sure they get ahead of you.
Mhm.
I don't think the roundabout teaches people not to stop. You know, they don't have to stop anymore. And so we see it in the back of our store, those guys don't stop at that stop sign anymore, they just roll right through. And I think that's what happens with these roundabouts too. So I would not see where we need one.
I think for the design of the road, we need to talk to the fire department. There's a significant amount of traffic from the ambulances and fire that goes that way through town. So that boulevard, as cool as that would be, I'm not sure the practicality of getting around traffic.
We don't think it's so much a traffic flow at that corner. I think personally, you know, I stop at that corner and I'm looking around, waiting on the light. So I'm looking at the businesses. I'm looking at everything that's around me. You get a roundabout, all I can do is watch cars. I'm scared of that. So
I'd rather see you take the money from the roundabout and beautify the parks and the areas that are around it. I mean, you know, the park down the corner, take that money and make that more usable for people, you know, that want to hang out and get there, do something there instead of, I'm not a friendly person with roundabouts, so I'm not for that one at all either, but use the money elsewhere or extend it down further where people are going to be walking to the store or to Dollar General or whatever, you know, use that money elsewhere. Maybe.
Put parking in that park right there. Nobody uses it because there's no parking, and you have to walk to get to it. So is there a place where you can put in some parking where people can actually access?
Well, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna say that I kind of like roundabouts and I see what Ron is talking about in terms of making that kind of a centerpiece area. The only question I have about it, and I don't know, I used to dislike it, but I mean, they're something you just get used to. But I can see how it would be a sort of a central focal point, you know, at our, you know, main intersection there. My only question is there enough, how much property do you have to take down? I mean, I think the old hardware store there is kind of a landmark, and of course, you know, Mike Stoll might not want to lose his house, so I'm not quite sure how you place it. It does take up more room than that intersection, I would think, although I guess you could kind of place it how you want, but anyway. I don't know is the 7-Eleven closed permanently? What is anybody saying?
It will open, it's gonna be a corporate store,
Okay.
so they are working at opening it back up again.
Chris, can you talk a little bit about trees? I know we kind of had a little bit of heartache in town just because of flowering and pollen and stuff that comes in. Is there trees that will work better than others that aren't gonna?
Yeah, we've had good success with several street trees. We've been recently putting in Zogoba trees. They get pretty much a base shape kind of style to it, and they like urban. They tend to adapt to urban areas such as this rehabbing the sidewalks.
I think that's in that Auburn picture.
Yeah.
Are they-
But I mean, there's concern about pollen and flowering and stuff like that we always have to consider. Debris dropping, like we did Kentucky coffee tree or something like that, you have seed pods, we look at the fruit and what it kind of generates and take that into consideration. So we do have a palette of trees that we use for urban streetscapes that are, nothing's maintenance free, but not having the issues that you typically have with some of those trees.
How tall are they grow?
Zacoba's 30 feet, 30 or
They're not
something.
overly
Right.
large and they're really small in the streetscape because they're confined.
Right. And it's, whenever we talk about streetscape, there's always that question. It's like, do you put big trees in, do you put small trees in, or do you don't put no trees in at all? Jackson Boulevard and Elkhart, we wanted to have that feeling of canopy. When you're walking down the sidewalk, have that pedestrian scale canopy that you're walking along the street. It's a great feeling. It's kind of soft. It cools things down and you can actually enjoy the hot days. You can enjoy the sidewalk. And then you can have restaurants, things like that have the outdoor seating. Then there's some municipalities that just want to do ornamental trees because they don't want to maintain it. They're concerned about the trees going into the buildings and then you have to kind of cut off one side because it's right up against the building. Then you have other communities that say, hey, we don't want any trees fall because we don't want to maintain them. We don't have to trim them. And we have the issues or potential issues of concrete sidewalk heaving and stuff like that. I'm personally in favor of trees and I would like to see them as close as possible. And for the reason is that's what I mentioned before is you have that psychological effect and that physical effect of the separation between your walking area and your vehicular area. And people tend to feel more comfortable with that walking up and down the streets when you have that, in addition to the light fixtures and street lights and stuff like that. But yeah.
How do you deal with the issue that, depending on the tree, it cuts off the view of signage? I mean, I've heard that around the room here a little bit.
Right.
I like trees too, but I don't know how you deal with them, and I'd like to see them, but have you found solutions that accommodate both issues, both things?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the style of how the tree grows. If you think about this, in 30 or 40 years, the trees finally mature, where you have that dense canopy, but then that canopy is cut 14 and 15 feet in the air because of the branching.
That's what he's saying with the Zelkova. It is a more narrow minded tree. It's not a broad tree like an oak or a maple tree that is 40 to 50 feet wide. This is more like 12 to 15 straight up and down.
And I think you have to look at the architecture too, because now in Elkhart, when you're talking about trees, their buildings are 2-3 stories.
Right.
You're talking some of these are 1 story, whatever. So it would definitely hide signage, even if it was a small tree, where maybe planters would be available for those types of things.
Well, and we could, there's possibilities of looking at sight lines for where that signage is and where to place those trees. Like if it's in between 2 buildings,
right,
as opposed to right smack in front of the front door.
Do we have to be concerned with the concrete and the root structure?
That's always a concern. Not all trees. There are some trees that do break up concrete, and we avoid those trees. There's ways to install the trees so you force the roots down. There's other ways, other methods that we like to link the trees together through structural soil or topsoil matrix or pathways for the roots to grow. So you force the roots to go in a certain way. So you can prevent and help minimize the amount of roots, the concrete from the heaving and breaking based on these trees. Like if you use maples, forget it. Those will break up all your concrete. I forget what other trees are there that have superficial root systems. But there's a handful of them that we just avoid all in general. 1, because of the tree canopy and the heaviness of the trees. And then 2, because of the root systems.
I like one of the pictures you showed earlier from the streetscapes where it had the outside flower beds and the integrated seating.
I think that was okay.
Yeah, here's one example. Then we did the Elkhart.
The seats right there, that looks sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing to be careful with these planters is the radiuses around the curbs. If you put them too close to the curbs, you always have to consider trucks. And not all trucks stay in the curbs. So it provides that kind of refuge for pedestrians at the intersections. But that's one thing we always have to look into is the vehicular access through there as well.
As far as the parking goes, like, say we stick to angle parking or whatever, but somebody mentioned that, you know, the sidewalks are maybe too big downtown. Maybe we could cut them back 12 inches or something.
I just looked at the cross section. You've got basically 100 feet right away to right away. And you've got almost 12 to 15 feet of concrete sidewalk on each side and 70 feet of asphalt. So there's a lot of asphalt that can come out that could increase your sidewalks and tree lawn space. And what goes in between the, like he's saying, the pedestrian and vehicular. So there's a lot of, like he was saying, road diet that could happen there.
I don't know that we need, like, I mean, I don't know that we're gonna get the foot traffic to need bigger sidewalks.
Something to think about if this transition happens and we do get Main Street here. And like Rob's talking right now, you can do the street guide, narrow it down, make the sidewalk bigger, because if you want to have a cruise in on this Main Street, you want to put a festival on this Main Street, you're going to appreciate having that extra sidewalk.
And like you were saying, that Fridays downtown or whatever, that gives you more space for people congregating, outside shopping, seating for a restaurant. That kind of
outdoor
stuff.
seating.
That gives you more of that congregation gathering space. So,
Also, if you're going to put flowers and pots down through, alternating with the trees, you gotta leave access for somebody to tend to them, you know, to water them. You've seen the go-kart go down, and they need that, or else they're off the street. So
Right.
If they're in the street and there's not the big traffic we have, that's beautiful. But if until the 2024, 2025, and you get those big trucks reestablished going another way, which one you gonna do first, you know? Because one's gonna, if you put all the trees down or all the flowers down and start with the sidewalks, is that gonna be between now and when you get them encouraged to go another way besides down through town, or is it down through town with the obstacles that you're going for first?
First will be the bypass. Once we're sure when that fairly certain when that'll open up, then we'll begin doing a construction project scope on Bell. Hopefully we'll have design done and ready to go to bid on this type of thing, maybe something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
First the bypass, then downtown.
Thank you. I didn't understand it.
Somehow I've got to figure out, I have to figure out a way for the town council to agree to how we're going to pay for all of this. It's a few million
Well,
bucks.
that's.
It's a few million.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've always had a hard time with snow removal too. This seems like it's gonna make that a lot rougher.
That'll be certainly a design consideration is what we do with snow.
Right.
I was also wondering about the existing curb cuts for the businesses that already have on-site parking. Is this road construction gonna affect that at all? Are we gonna still be able to maintain our curb cuts to our businesses? Or is there gonna be a curb across there now at this time? For your parallel parking or diagonal
Typically don't
parking or
eliminate,
whatever?
yeah, we typically don't eliminate curb cuts. That's,
So we're down by that light. So that we,
I just wondered when you were talking about moving the sidewalks wider and narrowing the road and everything, if that would affect our curb cuts at all.
it's generally not a good idea to eliminate access. I
Right.
think you have a right to that.
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't propose, unless there's a curb cut that's just completely unnecessary, we'd maintain those. And that kind of helps kind of direct the more of the cross section with the 2 lanes with the center turn lane, is how do you get access to those?
As you can see, if you look at Pearl Street, there's 2 vehicles that are in that
Right.
that diagonal lane, and there's an old curb cut that's still there.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
left there.
Right.
because that property owner it was there, and he has a right to keep that there, unless he said they just eliminate it.
That's me.
I think you were talking also about, more walking space, like you want to have a Friday or whatever. But at that time, when this is coming through in 2025, this part of the road will belong to Bristol. If we want to shut that down,
Mhm.
or 3 blocks of it, shut it down like Ocean used to do, or Millbury, we have that, we can do that. Right now, we can't.
Right.
Because of state highway, INDOT. But at that time, so if you could close that whole area down, the foot traffic or the sidewalks would have to be wider to figure into a Friday or a downtown festival or anything like that.
Yeah, during the design, we would look at that, like if you wanted to close certain couple blocks off, we'd look at what kind of treatments are for the design, that you can easily shut that down and make it part of the overall design, so.
Instead of trees, can you think about shrubs that don't bloom?
We'll take a look at that.
Overhead utilities such as all these poles, I mean, that's obviously not a great thing to look at. Is that something that can be moved behind businesses, under the road?
They're
Not
very,
at all.
yeah. They repaired this down here.
Right.
Hugely, to the point where it just holding on by a thread, where the trucks have hit it, all that stuff going between Barbara's and our place and everybody on that side and this side. And all the big things coming through and holding all the lines up, it's waiting to happen.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of the streetscapes, we look at finding ways to either put the utilities behind the buildings or find a way to underground. Sometimes they're so cost prohibitive that just can't take place. We do go to the utility companies and ask them to clean it up, because sometimes they leave a whole bunch of cables up there that just don't belong up there.
We learned that from this building.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a financial implication with relocating underground utilities. Unless it's transmission line, anything can happen.
That's a conversation that we can have with NIPSCO. Find out, let them know what we're planning to do and see what they're willing
They're
to
willing
offer.
to do, yeah.
Right.
And like they said, would you do one block at a time,
A lot of the times when we work with utilities, they look at the overall, like the downtown area,
Yeah.
just to figure out how their network is going to work and if that's even possible for them to relocate. Yeah, we had to deal in Elkhart, we had to deal with Frontier, Comcast. Comcast, Frontier and Verizon are the same, so we had to deal with them. NIPSCO, AEP. There was a company that we didn't even know that was on the line and we'd never heard of them before. It was like Great Plains. And so when all the lines came down off the utilities, there was one line still up there and we had to really look and see who that was. They did do a lot of investigation to finally were able to move their lines. But that's like a 2-year process. So
I would have just cut it and see who.
we had thought about doing that. We had thought about doing that, but no contractors want to even mess with it.
Ron, you remember this building when someone said, let's just cut the pole down, let's go show up.
Yeah.
Comcast was the worst to do it because they left their lines up on the poles. AP got all their stuff out, underground everything. Comcast was the last one online. Contractor that was working on a project just rolled it up, went to the last pole, stuck it up on the pole and called it done.
Yeah, well, and as you all know, Maple Street, when we did this extension here, we were mandated by MDOT to maximize the intersection of Maple and 120. And there's still an old pole there that's got Comcast and Frontier on it. Power came in and did their thing, and they're very lagging and taking care of their utility.
Right.
So maybe if we bark louder at them, they will come out and do something with it, but it tends to be, they don't show up until somebody's hit something and knocked it down, or a truck's caught a hold of it, and they have to do something at that point.
We were one of those people who cut the line and figured someone would be out. Because, the big truck came around and pulled all the electricity light across from the store. And the Comcast was blocking our store because it was kind of drooping. We just cut it. All of a sudden Comcast was out.
Mhm.
Someone didn't have
Yep.
internet.
Someone said they didn't have their
Well,
cable.
when the tree fell down on my house, that's the same thing. I had, NIPSCO was out there and they saw a line hanging down and it was Xfinity and they just cut that one. They said, we don't know who it belongs to. And I said, well, I don't either. How am I gonna get there?
Yeah, it gives me the shivers to think about utility coordination, but it's always pointless if we do up front. Because it takes forever for them to get moving on it.
Is there a fiber network in place right now, or is it coming, I heard something about dark fiber. Is that?
We have the county fiber goes through part of the town, but Surveyor is putting fiber in supposedly every street in town. Eventually they'll get there.
That's gonna be underground, right?
Yes. Frontier just contacted us. They'll be installing fiber optic lines of some sort as well, which means that building probably is not going to go away, folks, as much as we like to have it. But
The old, the central office is still operational.
yeah, it's still
Behind the subway.
operational.
Yeah.
And if they're installing fiber optic, I'll bet they tie into that building, so we'll see. Just looking at your schedule, next is a conceptual plan presentation. Do you have enough information to create a conceptual drawing?
Yeah, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the information we just collect today, and we'll come up with one or two concepts for the downtown area. And we'll have image boards and things like that of what we envision. Like maybe bringing art nodes into it, the benches, things like that, just to kind of get further input from everybody. And that'll include like the bump outs and road diet and sidewalks and all the proposed improvements. And we'll go through that process and we'll present it, get input, and then the next meeting after that would be, between that time would be a refinement of that to come up with a preliminary master plan. And then the final one would be in January 10th.
What I would encourage you to do is when you're out and about, you're traveling somewhere and you see something cool, take pictures of it. I've got some pictures of Cassopolis, Michigan. Their downtown, their main street's just phenomenal. And I will get with Mike to where, well, actually, I'll get with you guys too. I can give these pictures to you. I've got them on my phone. And we can make stuff available. So the next meeting that we have, you can actually see some, just like the projects that they've shown that are local here and a few of them that are a little further away. And then something to remember, I want you to think that I'm in favor of doing a big roundabout down on that intersection, just put that out there. But what I can tell you is Angola has always had a roundabout. It's huge. And Urbana, Ohio has had a roundabout since that town's inception happened there. And that is the focal point of their downtown. It's been there for forever and it's been made wider and improved to the point that they can't do it anymore. But it really works well. And they have two state routes that cross right in the middle of their downtown. And it just, their downtown, when you're there, is pedestrian friendly, even though they have this ginormous roundabout. It is pedestrian friendly. We have to keep that in mind. Roundabouts, yes, they're to keep traffic moving, but it's not like, and you're always gonna have those people that just are gonna zoom through something. There's people that are gonna probably hit it, or things happen. Accidents happen in regular intersections too. So let's have an open mind on everything. Something I'd like you to think about is fixtures, lighting, and sound. That'll be part of this main street. So if you see a cool fixture when you're out and about, take a picture of it. Let's get the best information we can. So as a group that we can collectively all agree that, wow, we like this element and this element. We like we like this part of the design that you're presenting. Let's all work together and really make this happen. And we're out in front of this now, and I appreciate Ken's willingness to bring you guys here to work with us on this, because as you see, we're out to 2024, 2025. We're all gonna be a lot older then, but I think we're all gonna be better looking too. And we're getting out in front of this now, so it's not a rush in your hurry to try to design what you think is gonna be adequate for here. So let's all do our homework, and when we come back in 2 weeks, let's have a really productive meeting.
And I appreciate all of your willingness to get involved in this, because that's what it takes. You're actually volunteering, whether you know it or not. Here you are, you're sitting here volunteering your time. It takes volunteers to make good, positive change and to make good things happen in your town. And this is our little town, and we should love it, and we'll love it more when we get this accomplished. Thank you.
All right.
Can I just say one more thing? You talked about Cassopolis.
Yeah.
They have water in place on their light poles to water the planters. And I'd like to see some kind of access to water downtown
Okay.
to water our flowers.
Good idea.
Not like something where they pull the trailer around with the water cart.
I have to haul jugs from home right now.
There's a good possibility we'll have to replace the water lines to Main Street anyway, so we dig it up, so
Right,
we
so
can
we put
be
access
part of
to
that.
that.
project.
And you guys do realize that, once this plan gets together and town board gives approval and everything else, then it's the money thing. I just, it's
Just-
always the money thing.
Just a
I'm
few
sorry.
bucks, just a few bucks.
Just a few, the 5 gas is bad enough, but, so keep in mind not to be, we don't want to look tacky. We want to look, rich without $1 billion going out there. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how to put that. But, we want, yeah, that's what we want.
Do you guys have any information on, say, downtown Elkhart,
Mhm.
revamping that? What did that add to the maintenance cost as far as the town is concerned? I mean, how many people did they have to hire to maintain the landscape? Maintain the snow removal, et cetera? Is there any added cost there, or?
Yeah, we have some of that information. I don't have it with me right now, but like for the downtown Elkhart Jackson Boulevard thing. I know when we went through the design first, it was, hey, this is what our buildings and grounds can do or what they can't do. So we need to design to that. And what we decided was that we were going to design it based on what the intent is for that area. And then work kind of backwards as to what kind of maintenance is actually required and whether that was a public or private kind of partnership, whether they brought in contract work to get that maintained. We do have that information regarding snow maintenance and landscape maintenance and what that
Yeah,
additional
information on
improvements
the actual
require.
cost.
Mhm.
It's the cost that
Yeah.
bothers me, not
Yeah,
me.
and that's what a lot of people don't consider, and I appreciate that question, because they want all these great designs, but they don't know how to maintain. Like Wellfield Botanic Gardens, they have an endowment because they know that there's maintenance that is required for that.
But they also have a generous list of volunteers that
Right.
volunteer their time, and they
Yeah.
go and plan all those things. They have students that come in they're involved in horticulture in college. They go to college to be horticultural engineers. They come and do internships there, and they also work with the Parks Department in Elkhart. They have volunteers that they go out and plant those planters.
Yeah, and a lot of our designs put that into consideration regarding maintenance. We don't want to come up with a design that the town or the cities are like, now that it's installed, how are we going to maintain this? Or we can't maintain it, and then a couple years later, it looks like garbage because it's just something that's not feasible at all.
I think you see that in Niles. We go through Niles quite a bit, and they did a rescape. They put planters in, but people have hit them and they're all coming apart.
Yeah.
So that's what my husband and I talk about all the time. It's not the initial investment, it's the future upkeep that costs. And people don't understand that. They like it to look pretty, but then who's gonna keep it up 5 years?
So going through this process, we'll have that information. At the end of the day, we'll have some preliminary estimates put together for these master plans, what is the potential investment? And then we'll have a component in there that'll be the maintenance aspect.
One other thing I like you to think about, I'm just looking at my notes here, social zones, where they take a street and just for a portion of the year, that street is no longer passable with traffic. Sometimes it's only on the weekends that it's not passable in towns. They open it up as a social zone and it's a complete walking street. You have tables, chairs, and people can stay within the confines of that area
whether it's a festival and, or if it's just a weekend where you go and meet friends. Phoenixville in Pennsylvania, they do the 4 blocks of their main street as a social zone on Friday to Sunday. It is closed to traffic, and they have ways of traffic to move through town still, but they have this social zone, and it is amazing. It's just a big street gathering, and it's cool. So these are things that I want you to think about too, in the process of doing all this.
I think we also have to figure, when we're talking about larger cities compared to the small town. And that's what's important, maintaining that small town atmosphere. And instead of, we can't begin to be an Elkhart or,
Right.
Well, in 1879, we were larger than Elkhart, but we can't begin to be an Elkhart and, or a South Bend or,
Right.
Any of those. We have to work on a smaller scale.
Yeah, when we worked on Lakeville, we worked on their streetscape before US 31 got rerouted around. And the intent behind that was that we wanted to make sure that when people are still traveling through Lakeville, that people understand they're still a viable community. So we had to look at what kind of streetscape components we can put into that fits the community. But makes it, look a lot better than it did. And so that when people are now going around it, they're like, oh, I remember Lakeville, and they have something coming up, we want to go back. So that's an important point. Yeah, so if anybody has additional thoughts after this meeting, great ideas or anything, we will send out, once we get the sign-in sheet, we'll put together an email, then I'll have everybody's contact and, yeah. Okay, great.
Are we always going to have the meetings at 8 o'clock? I need to know for future. I'm generally working in the morning, so.
The consensus of, I think, the majority of the business owners was this was a good time to do this, and that's how we chose the time of 8 to 9 and try to.
Okay, I
keep
just
it
noticed
within
that
that time.
Peggy said she's putting it there later, but.
But I also believe, I talked to Mike and said, are we capable of recording these meetings? And
We are.
we are recording that, so if you miss a meeting, you should be able to access that and take time to see what you missed, and so you're abreast of the next, when you show up for the next meeting. And in closing on my part, I just want to say, we talked about the cost. In 2017, I asked the council, can we work together as a team? We're at a point where we can do this. We can make a new town hall here, and we can start this bypass and get this town moving forward. And we all agreed we'll work together as a team, and we did that. And I got a lot of flack. I heard, oh, you're building Taj Mahal, you're just wasting tax dollars. By the time we get this bypass completed and start working on this downtown, most of us are going to be retired, or some of us are already retired. We're definitely going to be older, but like I said, better looking. And the time is now. When we set out to build this town hall, I was told, oh, you're wasting millions and millions of tax dollars. If we built this town hall today, and Ed, the cost of this town hall was approximately $4 million. And today's economy, where we're at right now today, if we were doing this project now, what would we be looking at?
7 or 8.
Double the cost. Same way with what we build out here, the intersection all the way down to Bloomingdale. That would easily have doubled in cost. So it went from 2.7 million to about $5.5 million. So that's the thing to think about, is we're in a position, to do some of these things now. Let's look at now, because it's a generation behind us. Millennials are all going to be running this town, and Elkhart, they're already in place, and they're working their way up the ladder, and they'll be running all this. And I can't help but think they'll appreciate that we collectively took the bull by the horns and made it happen. So again, I appreciate all of you going to volunteer your time here.
All right,
I guess, we're done?
We're adjourned.
We're adjourned.
very good. Thank you, I appreciate it.
9:05. I get 2 minutes for
taking up 5 minutes. See you next week.
And then.
She's, I've got all her